Good afternoon, everybody. It's your pal Martin the Metalhead here. Hope you're going well. I'm all dressed up like a snooker player because I've been to a Zoom interview recently and I'm just getting ready to go to a job interview for tomorrow. So, making sure my clothes are all perfecto. So, anyway, last weekend on Saturday was an exciting moment in my life because after a period of 5 years of waiting, I got to see Jesse Clegg live. Now, to do a bit of a backstory, alright? When I was 35 years old in London, I was hanging out with a South African woman, and I was telling her all about how I grew up watching Ladysmith Black Mambazo on Sesame Street, and then I used to watch Anton Fig play the drums on The Late Show with David Letterman. And I thought, okay, South Africa has a really proud history of its music and people who left South Africa to do big things abroad, like David Matthews and Nate Nasaka and Ruth First and Joe Slovo, depending on what you see on the side of the politics of history. As the saying is, like, one man's terrorist is one man's freedom fighter. So this woman told me all about Johnny Clegg, who sadly passed away in July 2019. Now, I had no idea who Johnny Clegg was, but the one thing that kicked me was I watched Fern Gully, that movie. Disney movie it was in the 90s. It had a song by Johnny Clegg, Life is a Magic Thing. And then also, I remember I watched the World Cup draw in South Africa in 2009, and that had Johnny Clegg performing, or lip-syncing would be, the Scatterlings of Africa. And I thought to myself, why did I not discover who Johnny Clegg was when he was living? Because he performed a concert in London a few years before I passed away. It was around the time I just moved to London. So I was kind of kicking myself, like, oh, I wish I got to see Johnny Clegg. But then I started, reading up about who he was. I started studying his music. I started studying his life story. I went to Bacup in northern England where he was born, even though he was actually born Rockdale, Little Borough, in that area, stayed there for 3 months. I've been to Jerusalem where he's been, and that's where his sister is, his half-sister passed away in Israel. And then also I've been to his grave in the Jewish section of West Park Cemetery where I left my Magen David, wore my kippah, left a stone, said a couple of prayers and sang his songs, and gave thanks to that South African woman for teaching me all about his music. So, for many years, I've been thinking that I would have to go to South Africa to see Jesse Clegg because it's been ages since Jesse Clegg, the son of Johnny Clegg, had toured here. I know he's performed at Isle of Wight, he's done a few gigs here, but he bases his life in South Africa and he travels to America to record and tour and perform, even though his music isn't even charting in America. But that's like what happened with his father's music. His father's music didn't really chart in America, but American audience knew who he was because of appearances on David Letterman. And so I would kind of hope that Jesse Clegg would do, some shows in America, because that would attract if you're a South African artist and you perform in Australia, United States, or Europe, you're going to attract the South African diaspora living there. So Jesse Clegg was actually doing a show in Joburg in September 22 when I was in South Africa, but sadly I was on the other side of the country. And I was really kicking myself. I was stuck in Durban. I missed out on seeing Jesse Clegg, and I also missed out on seeing this Botswana death metal band Rust. So I told myself, Martin, you gotta get back to South Africa and see Jesse Clegg, because even though Jesse Clegg is a British citizen, like me, through descent, because his father was born in the United Kingdom, he doesn't get the offers to do shows here, I guess. But then, all of a sudden, Jesse Clegg and all these other artists from South Africa came to perform in Trafalgar Square last weekend on Nelson Mandela Day to celebrate the 30th anniversary of the South African Constitution. Now, I thought to myself, this has really hit me hard. I thought, wow, this is my opportunity to see Jesse Clegg, because I know that he's going to cover his father's songs. And I went to the free concert in Trafalgar Square, and there were so many different artists from South Africa who I never heard about, and I thought these different artists were amazing. I thought to myself, I'd have to message my South African friends saying, hey, tell me more about this guy or that guy or the others, because I was only pretty much there to see Jesse Clegg. So Jesse Clegg, did 2 different sets. He did a few songs with this lady, and then he did some solo stuff. And then he brought out the guy from Jaluka, who performed with Johnny Clegg in the early days before he decided to retire from all the money he earned from touring and decided to settle on the farm. And that's why Johnny Clegg formed Savuka afterwards, which only lasted for a few more years because, sadly, of the murder of Dudu and the taxi wars in 1992, what it was? Yes. So I was standing in Trafalgar Square right next to the Clegg family, next to Johnny Clegg's wife, Jesse, his son Jaron, and the granddaughter, Jesse's daughter. And I was really moved and touched, and I really wanted to go up and say, thank you so much for what you're doing in preserving the legacy of Johnny Clegg. And because, I myself, I've been teaching so many people in the last few years all about Johnny Clegg, and I'm not even South African. So I remember just muddling to Jenny. I was like, I'm so happy to see Jesse Clegg today. She's like, sorry, I can't talk right now. But I mean, I just, I'm a person who is respectful. I'm not a fanboy, and even though in my heaven all days I used to hang outside the fire exit to get autographs and stuff like that, I'm not a person who would, really like to pester famous people for autographs. If I bumped into Joan Collins on the street, maybe I'd throw up, because that's what happened before I met Joan Collins. I threw up, but I wouldn't really pester Joan was like, "Hi Joan, I'm a big fan. Can I have an autograph?" Because Joan Collins already gave me 3 autographs. She's gave me 2 signed 8x10s and a signed book. So I was happy I got to see Jesse Clegg live. Now, what I want to go do in the future is I hope Jesse Clegg can, achieve more success than his father did. But as it's been shown that South African artists don't tend to be successful abroad unless they tour, unless they travel, unless they, live in a different country. You see, because there's a saying, some South Africans have, foreign passports. They move to Britain, they get a British passport. They move to Australia, they get an Australian passport. They move to New Zealand, they get a New Zealand passport. If they could, settle somewhere and get the green card of America, I reckon they could achieve big things, I guess, and also still contribute, do gigs back home in South Africa. But this is really close to my heart because even though I've only ever bought one Johnny Clegg album, which I gave to my favorite Jewish friend of mine, because of the whole Johnny Clegg's connection with Judaism and all, I think Johnny Clegg's legacies has to be remembered. And people have written to me basically saying, why don't we put, a plaque in Bacup or Lancashire to say that Johnny Clegg lived here as a child? And I'm like, well, it's worthy. I mean, he did come from the area, but it's not really it's not really significant. It's like all those blue plaques you see in London that say, oh, David Bowie recorded an album here. Oh, Bob Marley lived here while surviving an assassination attempt in Jamaica. A birthplace of a British artist born in the United Kingdom who lived the rest of his life in South Africa, it's not really that significant, but it should be nice to see on the signs in Bacup, birthplace of Johnny Clegg, or Littleborough, the same thing. But I think in Paris, I would like to see that an alley should be named after Johnny Clegg, because Johnny Clegg was really successful in France. He sold more than Madonna and Michael Jackson, and one evening in Lyon, Waka Jacko decided to cancel his concert, all because Johnny Clegg was pinching Michael Jackson's fans. Because it was a reporter said, the people of France are liking the white man who wants to be black, rather than the black man who wants to be white. Sounds a bit racist, though. Anyway, thank you, Jesse Clegg, for coming to the United Kingdom. I hope to see you again whenever I get to South Africa. And I do pray and hope that you will do more shows in the United Kingdom and Europe, because the South Africans who live in Europe love you dearly and would pay to see you. My name is Melhead, over and out.